Hi everyone, I am Nisreen Kandil, a doctoral student working under the supervision of Professor Karim Bensoukas and affiliated with the research laboratory Langue, Littérature, Art et Culture at the Faculty of Letters and Human Sciences, University Mohammed V, Rabat, Morocco. So this presentation is centered around the stem in Moroccan Arabic. The main headings of the presentation are the following. First, we present a set of arguments against the consonantal root in Moroccan Arabic morphology. The first argument we adduce is the unpredictable nature of the output vowels. Second, the vacuous grammatical status of lexical output vowels. Then, we move to the stability of lexical vowels through derivational paradigms. The fourth argument would be the misleading nature of the consonantal root before concluding with some challenging data for psycholinguistic and cognitive experiments. Second, we present two arguments against the exclusive use of the segmental root. The first one, shape variant outputs with distinguished meanings. Second, outputs of earlier derivation as morphological basis. The third station in our presentation is the stem in verbal and nominal morphology. First, we determine the verbal stem in the language, then we move to determining the nominal stem in Moroccan Arabic. After that, we talk about the underlying nature of stems, and before we conclude, we will see how stem accommodation works in the perfective inflection paradigms of three-letter verbs. In Moroccan Arabic, we distinguish a tripartite vocalic system including E, U, and A. Under the precept of the root-based approach, these vowels are assumed to emerge from the underlying semi-vowels Y and W. But if Y and W straightforwardly map onto the corresponding high vocoids E and U, this cannot be said of the presumed surface A since its underlying nature would be unpredictable. A could not be paired with a particular semi-vowel. So here we have bdi and bdu, and we have two verbal nouns, bdia and bdu, but we have the surface bda. The same could be said for khaf and the causative khuf, so we are assuming that the root is khawf, but we have another case with a surface a, bet, and the causative beat, assuming that the root is bait. The root-based approach holds that output forms are made of a consonantal root that carries the core semantic meaning, and a vocalic melody that conveys the morphosyntactic meaning like the active or the passive participle, operating on different tiers and maps onto a shape-invariant template. However, in the majority of underived weak forms, some vowels seem to contribute no grammatical information whatsoever, as stated by the data set below. The vowels in the singular forms contribute no grammatical meaning to their hosts, as opposed to the vowels in the plural forms that stand for the plural marker. The sole exception is the vowel in the item hmar, which could be considered as an overt singular marker, given the fact that it gets suppressed by the inflectional plural affix or the nisba vocalic suffix e. So we conclude that these vowels are lexical rather than being grammatically motivated. The morphology of Moroccan Arabic is abundant with morphological processes in which lexical vowels show a great degree of stability. We choose the pluralization of some native and loan words. In the course of pluralization, we note the preservation of lexical vowels, colored in green, so that they may surface in the output or get devocalized to a semi-vowel. What is important to signal is the loss of the overt feminine marker, colored in red, along with the singular vocative in yellow. The set of loan words in B proves that the latter borrowings are fully integrated in Moroccan Arabic, since they pluralize in the same fashion as native words do. So we can safely conclude that underived stems, native or borrowed, count consonants and vowels. The latter are stable in the course of derivation. The consonantal root falls short of accounting for certain output generated from a related basis. To see how this works, consider the following nouns of profession. So we have sbabni, washer, and we have swabni, dealer in soap, both from the root sban. Krarti, raker, and quarti, card player, both from the root cart. But why does the root extend on the template by spreading the root middle consonant in the first outputs and choose to extend through a parenthesis of the default filler w in the second ones? Assuming that each pair derives from the same consonantal root leaves the presence of the two correspondent outputs with distant meanings unaccounted for, but from a stem-based approach whereby the input could be an underived stem involving lexical consonants and vowels, or simply the output of an earlier morphological process, it could be derivational or inflectional, a straightforward explanation obtains. So, QWERTY is morphologically derived from the factitive causative QRT, not from the root QRT, and QWERTY is morphologically derived from the broken plural form, QWERT, which in turn obtains from QERTA, generated from the root QERT. Psycholinguists assume that morphological representation and lexical access are centered around the consonantal root. However, Moroccan Arabic morphology counts challenging data that put into question the legitimacy of their claim. The first set concerns verbal nouns with no overt exponents. So we assume that ghish, cheating, is derived from the verb ghish, cheat, with no overt exponents. And we have bni, building, derived from the verb bni, build. So we cannot be sure whether the speaker singles out the root or the stem segments, especially in sound forms like shik, suspicion, from shik to doubt. Another interesting case is the formation of verbal nouns and instantiating verbal nouns from hollow verbs. The set of verbal nouns based on hollow verbs is crucial to our argument. In particular, the last two items, siam and ziyara, in which the velar semivowel is not underlying, but it is the result of a dissimilatory process. So, we have the root som, yielding the verb sum and the causative suam, but we have the verbal noun siam. We have the root zor, yielding the verb zor and the causative zuor, but we have the verbal noun ziyara. So in this case, if the speaker would be asked to extract the root segments, he or she would extract a consonantal string which does not correspond to the core roots. Similar cases are reported by Heath in Moroccan Arabic active participles and diminutives. For the first, we have the root bos, we have the active participle base, and we have the diminutive, or we have the root riel, and the diminutive ruil. Davis and Zuwaida report a similar case in the derivation of hypochoristics in Imani Arabic. So we have the root nur, yielding anwar, and the hypochoristic nawur, but we have again the root aud, yielding the noun aida, and the hypochoristic ayud. Now we move to the first argument we adduce against the exclusive use of the segmental root. To develop our arguments, let's have a look at some nisba nouns. So we have tarf, tarfani, hmar, hamrani, din, dini, yum, yumi. The second subset, we have sabun, swabni, and spabni. And we have saqur, swakri, msakri. While the first subset obtains easily from the segmental root, as we have seen, the last subset is problematic. The derivation from the root yields swabni and swakri, but never sbabni and msakri. So, to account for the latter outputs, we need to recognize another base besides the root, which happens to be the factitive causative sabun, wash, and the instantiating verbal noun msakra, fencing. Now, we consider two morphological processes, one derivational and the other inflectional, whereby morphologically and semantically established forms act as derivational bases. The first set, we have nouns of profession derived from agent nouns. So we have tebnait, masonry, derived from bnay, mason. Tanjart, carpentry, derived from njar, carpenter. We move to the second set concerning the diminutive plural. The diminutive plural is derived from the singular diminutive. So we have ruwijlat, derived from ruwijl, guerroyat, derived from guerro. So the above data sets prove that not only root segments stand as derivational inputs, we may also have derived stems, or what we call outputs to previous derivational processes, as bases. A root-based approach complicates the process of base identity and blurs the grammatical link that exists between morphologically related forms, which we believe crucial in deriving the exact semantic meaning of a given output. Now, we deal with the stem in verbal and nominal morphology. Which stem is underlying the surface facts? The optimal underlying stem is the one that anchors the fewest violations of the crucial constraints. In other words, among the competing input stems, the closest to the surface forms is selected as an input. The verbal stem in Moroccan Arabic. Heath poses the imperfective stem as a base of derivation in verbal morphology. But a close inspection of morphologically related forms reveals that the underlying stem is the imperative form, which happens to be the unaffixed form of the imperfective. For instance, the imperative be would be the base for the imperfective, the perfective, the active participle, and the verbal noun. The same could be said for the quadrilateral verb, in which we have the imperative ayn, which is the base of the imperfective, the perfective, the active participle, and the verb. The nominal stems in Moroccan Arabic. We have seen so far that nominal word formation involves different stems. We distinguish, in accordance with Heath and Al-Ghadi, two nominal stems. The first one, underived stems, made of root segments. And we cite the broken plural as an example of word formation process, making use of the underived stems. On the other hand, we find derived stems, which are simply the output of previous morphological processes. Example of word formation processes that make use of this type of stem: diminutives derived from the feminine form, diminutives derived from nouns of instance, nisba nouns obtained from the broken plural pattern CCACC, nisba nouns obtained from nouns of instruments, and nouns of instance from collective nouns. The underlying nature of stems. Stems, contrary to roots, are not underspecified. So, verbal stems are inherently marked for tense and overtly inflected for person and number. Nominal stems are inherently marked for gender and number. Stems have pre-specified prosodic structure. So, segment weight and length are underlyingly specified. Vowels and Gemini consonants are moraic. Second, unmarked syllable structure is built. Core CV or CC syllables are erected. Reduplication is an indicator of underlying syllable structure in Moroccan Arabic. So we have the underlying ma, which gets expanded to mama through the reduplication or the copy of a well-defined material, which is a monomoraic syllable. So we have da, who will get dada. So what support our claim are the prosodic augmentation tools employed by the language. To have grasp of the issue, we consider the third characteristic. Stems can be free or bound. Free stems are attested words that can occur in isolation and bear distinguishable meaning. Bound stems are structurally defective and necessitate segmental and moraic augmentation. But prior to lexical insertion, both types of stems must abide by the two mora quota imposed on undersized word. So, what is of interest to the present discussion is to figure out in what ways stems, be they free or bound, are assigned full prosodic structure. And the best illustration would be the monomoraic words. So, the monomoricity of some stems could be resolved via prosodically induced mora augmentation, and here we distinguish positional weight, tolerance of semi-syllables by preserving underlying weight, mora epenthesis, or reduplicating a consonant-based syllable. Morphologically induced mora augmentation, we have the affixation of a phonetically unrealized mora. So the stem G, which means come in the second person singular imperfective, is a classical Arabic loanword subdued to glottal stop loss in the course of phonological integration. This stem resolves underweight by morphemic mora affixation. Another classical Arabic loanword, kul, whereby the affix mora is realized as a vocalic material, O. Stem accommodation in the perfective inflection paradigms of three literal verbs. The affix inflectional morpheme is a single mora, phonetically realized as one consonant, a CV syllable, or an unsettled syllable. The affixed material is right-aligned with the prosodic word H. The morpheme is suffixed to the right word mora of the stem. The inflectional morpheme is realized in every inflected form, and the affix mora of the third person masculine singular, which happens to be phonetically unrealized, is similarly realized through the deletion of the stem's right mora. To break the three-consonantal cluster, the high vowel E is epenthesized. The latter alters its height in the third person singular, feminine and masculine, and in the plural. The alternations in the third person feminine singular, shiddat, shiddat, are attributed to the dialectal variations. Thus, the speaker may choose to produce a perfect iambic foot by violating the mora, or a moraic trochee, eschewing the dep mora violation. Both types of feet are attested in the metrical system of Moroccan Arabic. Hollow verbs. The stem vowel is deleted, except in the third person singular forms, in which case it alters to the back low vowel a. The stem vowel in the third person, singular and plural, survives via the high ranking of an index constraint that prohibits the deletion of the stem vowel. However, its feature faithfulness is disrupted by the low ranking of the index constraint on its feature faithfulness. The defective verb qra. The underlying vowel a is kept. It alters to the high vowel e. To prevent its alternation in the third person, singular and plural, an index constraint requiring feature faithfulness of the stem vowel on input-output forms is used. The defective verb bo. The stem vowel's feature faithfulness is sacrificed to spare the vowel. The back low vowel a surfaces via high-ranking index constraint, demanding the realization of the stem vowel of the third person as an a. The defective verb kill. The epenthetic vowel is inserted to break the consonantal cluster upon affixation of the inflectional marker. The epenthetic vowel turns to an a in the third person forms. Finally, the hiatus situation resulting from the suffixation of vocalic material to the vowel final stems like kra, hba, shra is solved by the affix vowel devocalization. This is secured by the ranking of the feature faithfulness constraints of the stem vowel over the one. In this presentation, we have demonstrated that the consonantal root is inadequate as a morphological unit. Similarly, we have demonstrated that the segmental root with lexical vowels is also insufficient to account for Moroccan Arabic morphological system. Instead, we posit the stem, either an derived or an output to a previous morphological process, as the optimal unit of morphological representation. So, Moroccan Arabic stems can be bound or free with basic syllable structure. And of course, stems are accommodated by the language to preserve input-output identity and a uniform exponents across paradigms. Thank you for watching.